Great, thanks everyone for coming to this session. We're going to be having a special dialogue session for the upcoming premiere of the Southeast Asian Golden Age Symphony, which is kind of the capstone project for the symposium and being premiered Saturday evening at 7:30 p.m. So I'd like to go ahead and welcome to the stage the 7 composers and the 2 moderators and mentors, who are Adeline Wong, and join us all the way from Finland, Topi Lehtipuu, who have been important mentors along the journey to the 7 Southeast Asian composers. And finally, the principal conductor of Yongsoo To's Orchestral Institute, Jason Lai, and the 7 composers who will introduce themselves, I'm sure, as part of the dialogue. I just want to say, earlier this morning we were talking about the first 5 years of the Orchestral Institute, which is all about collaboration. So I've got to say this is the most massive collaboration I believe we've attempted in the history of the Orchestral Institute, and just a really exciting and dynamic project altogether. So without further ado, let's welcome the 3 mentors, moderators, and the 7 composers to the stage. Let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this very special dialogue session with 7 young, talented composers from Southeast Asia, together with Topi Lehtipuu, who's also the other mentor for this Southeast Asian Golden Age Symphony project, as well as our principal conductor of YST, Jason Lai. I thought I'll give a very short timeline background of this extraordinary project to the audience. So this project started July last year, where we brought these 7 talented composers to YST to meet each other. And I have also, some of them are our YST alumni. So why don't I begin by introducing them first. So on my right is Jonathan Shin from Singapore. We have Syafiqah, also from Singapore. Gema from Indonesia. Hoang from Vietnam, Thatchatham from Thailand. We call him Big, his nickname, so I almost forgot to say his actual name, Thatchatham. And we have Chie Tsang from Malaysia, Danny from the Philippines. So last July, we brought all 7 composers together at YST into this room where the 7 composers had to agree to come up with a theme for the symphony. So if you can imagine putting 7 composers in a room, making them find something that is a common element, it was actually quite a huge task, because there were moments of agreement, disagreement, laughter, sometimes anger, sometimes moments of silence where we don't know what they're doing. It was just all silent, and we have this all on footage in our documentary that's coming up as well. So I think it would be really exciting to start the conversation going on how this common theme and concept has actually taken place over the last few months. And so what happened was in July, they finally had this transformative process of agreeing with this theme, and they went back to their own countries. And April this year, we brought them all back, and this time with music. So they had a reading session with the orchestra conducted by our principal conductor, Jason Lai, with our own YST students playing through their sketches. So we wanted to provide this opportunity for the composers to kind of workshop their ideas as well, so that, they could even change things on the spot to just experiment with different sounds from the orchestra, because writing for the orchestra is not something you get every day. So it was a really huge opportunity for them to just go through those different sounds, different textures with the orchestra. So that was April this year. And now, on Saturday, we finally hear the end product as a symphony. So perhaps we could now start the dialogue going, now that we know the timeline of the whole project. So Topi, would you like to begin the discussion?
Hello, can you hear me?
You have to sing.
I have a song.
So, hi everybody, my name is Topi. So Jason, if you don't know who is who, Jason, Topi. Thank you, Adeline, for your starting words. Maybe the first question is just, we have a theme, as Adeline told.
Yes, I almost forgot that. Yes. Why don't, as planned, why don't I continue with this discussion first? Yes, we have a theme in that discussion room over 3 days. So perhaps maybe we can ask one of you or two of you, how did you come up with the theme? Thanks, John.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So obviously, firstly, I want to say it's an honor to be on stage with all these amazing, talented collaborators. It's just incredible. Last few months working together. 7 people coming up with one theme, not easy. We definitely put a lot of things on the table. We're like, what is a story in something in common that we all want to tell together? So we looked at the idea of, say, rivers. We looked at how in the Asian perspective of time, it's different from like Western time. We're talking about circular sense of time. And then in the end, we looked for something that could encompass all these scapes, and we settled on gongs. Because that's the one thing we not only have in common, but we also have in difference. Because we have, as I would learn on the project, we have Vietnamese gongs, we have Thai gongs, we have Indonesian gongs, we have Philippine gongs, and it was quite mind-blowing. So we finally settled on that, on the theme of gongs, and from there, I think we all decided what scapes can we draw from the gongs. So we had like, what stories can we tell of the gongs? Can we look at the acoustic sense of a gong? Can we look at the philosophical implications of a gong, rituals, and I think that was a happy medium. It's a bit too late to disagree now, because we've already written the piece. So would anyone else like to elaborate on the gong?
So it was actually a luck that we came up with the theme of gong. So after our first meeting, I think last year during July.
April.
No,
sorry, it was July last year. Yes.
July. And then we, after the first meeting, we couldn't find a theme, and then we were stuck, and then and then we went back to the hotel, and then I had a brief meeting with Chie Tsang and Thatchatham, and we just talked and have smoke as well, and
So one
Okay.
part of this
Okay,
whole
sorry
project,
about that.
project is mentorship. A good microphone technique is to attach it to your chin, under your mouth. That's a good place. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Topi.
anyway, we were talking outside the hotel, having some cigarettes, and then Thatchatham just came with the idea, hey, you know what? The gong is a common instrument in the region. And then I said, wow, that's a good idea. How about we present this idea to the member of the panel? And then everyone just agreed with that. So it was not, it's just a luck. So.
Brilliant. Maybe continuing that same subject, maybe Syafiqah, maybe you could answer first the next question. So you have this theme. What kind of process it was for you, considering your background? The composition process, thinking of gong, thinking maybe of river, which was partially the theme as well. Yeah, you. Yes, and what do you think, how can we hear that theme in your piece, in your composition?
So for me, as Hoang has said, right, the gong is a symbol that is representative of Southeast Asia. It's a common relic in or a musical instrument in most of the cultures in Southeast Asia. So I see the gong as a symbol of spirit, and I use it as an extra musical idea in my piece. And then I look into, okay, what else is common within the region, in between the Southeast Asian nations and countries, and say that what came up to me obviously is the collective stories of independence, of the struggle going into independence. And then I say, okay, maybe the gong can be seen as a symbol of spirit for Southeast Asia, and I took that as the driving force, the idea for my movement, and it is a story of Southeast Asia. It's telling the story of how Southeast Asia is awakened from oppression, from being colonized, from rising from the dark past. So that's the idea that I took into my piece.
Maybe Gema? Same question.
Okay, for me, gong is circularity, continuing, and vibration. So it's like empowering that symbol, that semiotic that I take, that how gong is embracing to each other, how me as a woman composer, is like empowering each other from, also refers to my piece. I also take a context of taboo for a woman and how it's like struggling in the historical era. It's like a woman, performing artist of woman is sometimes like have so many rules how to explore as a performer, as an artist to explore their art space or how to play a music, something like that. But with this gong, with this theme of the gong, we are empowering each other, giving a vibration for each other, and then how that spirit is the same. The spirit is like going to everywhere, anywhere, even in Southeast Asia and all around the world, something like that.
Maybe Hoang?
Actually, my piece is not as philosophical like as yours. So basically, my piece is an imitation of a culture in my country. So in my country, there is a region called the Central Highland, in which the community they use the gong as a symbol of wealth and authority, and they use the gong to play not for performance but for community. So I took my research by watching their videos and analyze how they those services in the community and try to convey those ideas and then translate into the expression of the orchestra. That's very simple.
Thank you. Beautiful. Big.
Thank you. First of all, really glad to be involving in this project. First, I want to say that I consider myself, as experimental music composer and artist. So the premise when joining this project was that I thought about how to compose a piece for how to compose a music for orchestra that doesn't sound like orchestral music. Yeah, that's tough, right? But we see how it fitting in. Responding to the theme, I see gongs, as a kind of instrument that connect people and have multi layers of meaning. So I work with the. I have a note here. I work with the notion of intertextuality in music itself and outside music. Meaning. Across the other medium. In the opening, you will hear in my piece, in my movement, a recording that I curate, and did transplant editing of Gerald Dyke's archive from the 70s. He was the first ethnomusicologist that did a full field recording of Lana music, Northern Thailand music, and you hear gong there. Using that recording as a referential point, I then compose an orchestral piece, as a kind of expansion of that recording, right? So basically, it's you hear gong, this noises, this inharmonicity, that's going on, and it's also a quotation to my mentor's vocal concerto, Ken Wei, where he sings on top of the recording, and we have the intertextual things that going on, and on top of that music, you can also see a handcraft video. I and my longtime collaborator, media artist Anon Nong Yao, we did that, suggesting a poetic deviation of a piece, and in the end, music close with present day's footage. I'm not going to say yet what it is, but in that footage, it connotes the present area where the recording took place 70 years ago. So it creates this kind of competing the art and kind of intertextual things. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Chie Tsang?
Thank you, Topi. And yes, I would like to say thank you so much for having me here and involved these wonderful projects. And I keep looking at my notes, but I want to try to be natural. So I'm afraid it will be like missing out some things. In my piece, Chilling, I think to try to trace what my colleagues have been saying, the gong for me is a very strong symbolic object, and I remember one of my challenges. I was thinking about how I should present the gong, because we are talking about so many things about how to use and what's the identity and things like that. So in my music, my question is that, and I'm so struggle to say, what if I don't use the gong in my piece? So that is the first steps I want to, to explore. So in my piece, I took away the percussion, I took away the gong, I took away piano, I took away the harps, and I would see how can I transform the orchestra into a gong, and I would, apart from that, coming from the place East Malaysia, Borneo, I'm really into ambience, the nature of the sound. And I started practicing, doing field recording, and these kinds of sound world, creatures, insects, winds, it's really affect my thinking and my listening. So I try to encapsulate all these elements and into my piece. So I think you find some of the strange or perhaps creatures, hybrid creatures in my piece later on. And apart from that, should I mention the pictures, the images? And besides the music, I also have prepared and worked with amazing visual artists, Moira Law, and also Topi, that I have generated with AI some of the pictures, and that kinds of pictures is perhaps is one of the things it will enrich the sound. So what I'm trying to say is I'm also to explore the visual and the music and see how it can be a whole performances as a gong. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Topi, could I just maybe make a comment on Chie Tsang's remarks? Because I think, when they came to the orchestra reading, my point is it was so important because Chie Tsang, your piece, when you wrote it in the sketches, they had so much percussion in it, I remember. And we had so many conversations together. Which symbols do you have? Chinese symbols, so many. And then when you finally submitted the final version, there was no percussion at all. So I think it is fantastic that during the orchestral reading session, you took in those sounds, and then you not just take it in, but you also extracted those sounds, which then became the orchestral, the orchestra itself being the gong for you. So I think, that's really fascinating, because I was quite surprised. I thought, was that a mistake? Because you asked me so many percussion instruments.
I asked you
yes,
so many
and then
gongs
there was
and
none.
we
So
found it.
it's really fascinating. Yeah, just wanted to share that.
Danny, please.
Yes, I think in my context where I consider myself as a migrant here in Singapore, being here for quite some time, and there are a lot of detachment that happened from my culture. I am from the northern part of the Philippines, and there is a specific gong culture which is very distinct from the south, where we use the gong as similar to what Hoang said about as a community symbol. There are a lot of engagement with this, but for me also, I base the theme on the complexities and the sonorities of these gongs that I grew up with. And I tried to symbolize this from basing it to express the complexities in the materials of my music, and with the energy, the blurring of identities among the instruments and so on, where I also semi-prepared the piano to have that kind of ambiguity. And then I presented also a toy gong, which you will hear on Saturday. It's called Sarunay. It's from the southern Philippines. That I also own this gong. And the reason why I put this in is because it was never presented back in my country as a serious instrument. You know, you have to have this in your home to practice with the real gong. So I thought, why not present this as an opportunity? It's a very resonant instrument, and it goes with the theme also of the the extra musical elements that we all have to work with. In my case, it's children's games, the text. So I thought this kind of linearity between being playful, also the fast pace and so on, will be expressed throughout this materials.
Thank you. And for the audience, before Jonathan answers the same question, just for you to know that for the concert on Saturday, there will be quite good program notes from each of the composers, so you can get even more colors, textual colors for their pieces. Please, Jonathan.
So for context, I've had zero gong culture in my life. The only time I played the gong was the only time I interacted with the gong was in Bartok's music for piano, for celesta and percussion, and they were missing a gong player, and so they got me to run back to hit the gong once. And that's my only interaction with the gong for my whole life. So I was thinking, how do I make this my own? And at that point, I was reading Jose Saramago's novel, The Cave, and it's about a man whose services as a potter is no longer needed. And I was thinking, I see a lot of things that are being phased out, like moving from you know how the analog moving to digital, and now we're moving to AI, and things are being phased out. You know, some people are feeling redundant. And so my piece is called The Maker's Last Gong, and he's essentially making his last gong, and it's a quick music, and it's about this man who's investing his soul into the very thing that he's making, and that's the last gong he will ever make. So that's how it's about industry, it's about Singapore, it's about being hardworking and just vanishing into your world, that sort of devotion. Yeah.
Brilliant. A rich subject. Next question to Jason, our conductor. As we know, Conductor is the kind of maybe midwife or something like that for the pieces. So how was this process for you as a conductor? And maybe second part of question in general, what's the conductor's role in working with the composers?
Well, firstly, giving birth is very tiring. But can I just say, first and foremost, thank you so much to the hard work for the students. They've worked so incredibly hard on 7 new pieces, and it's an incredible work they've done, and they've been really committed, and we've had to somehow experiment sometimes. It's been a give and take process. Sometimes the composers after a rehearsal say, can we change this? And they've been very good about that. So it's been really lovely to do that. And also thank you for the commission of this piece, because I think it's a wonderful idea to have this symphony from this region. And incredibly, 7 very different voices, which is hard for us and me to get our heads around, because we literally have to be chameleons. We have to change our ways of thinking about things. And as you'll see, for some of you that will stay for the rehearsal and also for Saturday, there's a lot of moving parts to this piece, not least lights, cameras, videos. It's not just about the music, and the music, of course, is very important. But it's been it's tiring. I've never had to do 7 premieres in one stint before. And I have to say, it was a little bit hard prizing the scores from your souls at the beginning, but eventually you relented, and we received your scores and we made parts, and that was helpful for us. But I know, I mean, being a composer myself in my former days, I can imagine on Saturday evening you'll be terrified sitting there, because I know I was when my music was performed. It's scary, even though you're not doing anything. I can imagine you're going through the same as we are on stage, right? I think, right? So it's a very fascinating process from all angles, and I'm so grateful that we're doing this here at Yongsil-to.
Thank you, Jason. Abib, Adel, to you.
Right. Thank you, Jason. And yes, absolutely, the students have been working so hard, and there's just, incredible level of playing and adaptations to everything that, we wanted to try with the composers. So wonderful. And yes, we're talking about orchestra experiences, not just from Jason's point of view. I thought perhaps some composers would like to share their experience at the reading session in July last year, and perhaps also right now in the rehearsals this week. How has it been for you all? Has it been the way that you wanted it to be? The music, since last July, you've changed, into different ways of approaching the orchestra and into deeper thoughts of your shaping of your piece as a whole. So perhaps, could somebody just perhaps comment on how has it been for you all working with the orchestra and perhaps working with Jason and the students as well? Anyone? Thanks, Syafiqah.
Okay, so maybe I can share my experience. First of all, the reading in April was very helpful. I'm sure it was really, really helpful to all of us composers. It's always very useful to hear what we actually have in our minds, what we have written or at least drafted with the score. And for me, there was a moment of being able to hear it live. It's just very different from what we imagine it on our own notation software or even in our minds. And so we took that home, and then we regurgitate again and then look into what can be expanded further. And I was very impressed with my colleagues here, the sounds that they do with their own work. It changed me in a way that it affected, or I was inspired to do something else with my work at that point of time. So it was all very refreshing. And of course, we got on to nearer to the date, and this was just last week also, where everybody's pieces was all ready, and we had it rehearsed with the orchestra, and then Jason and Adeline had to get back to me again after the reading of my final piece, and it turned out that the piece. We had to do much changes to it because we had to look at it as a whole, right? We had to shape it. You didn't hear the whole entire thing back then in April, but as the process go on and we had to work on our pieces, things took a different kind of turn, even though we had a theme and everything. And so they got back to me and said, "Can you do some changes to your score?" And I said, "Oh, okay, that's actually much to do there because." I went on from from producing a sound which is, as Jason mentioned it, something that is, what do you call that? It felt like calm, I had moments in the pieces where it's abrupt, and they thought that, okay, maybe we can have more of this calmness from my piece so that there's shape to the entire symphony. And I said, oh, okay, there's don't be much cuts there. But I said, this is also a kind of a process that we have to go through. We have to look into it as an entire thing, and I was in the end okay with that, because this is, in the end, it's a presentation that is it's going to be as a whole impactful to the audience in one sitting. So I was a bit sad, but also happy to accommodate to that as a composer in this work. And I think this is the give and take that Jason mentioned earlier, and we have to be mindful of that process, and that was what it was for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Syafiqah. I think until this week, there were still changes in the composer's pieces, minor changes, and until today.
Actually,
Yeah.
until this afternoon, I had still
we
some
had
mails.
received comments to do this change here. So I think as composers, we're always revising. We never stop revising until we get the next commission. I suppose we stop because we need to move on to the next piece. So yes, I have that as well. I like to revise pieces. So yeah, anyone else would like to share their thoughts and revisions of their works as well?
Okay. Syafiqah is right. It's like we inspired each other. That's the most important, because of our session in April. Because in April I was in Indonesia, and they are in here because I'm pregnant in 8th month, and then I must sit whole day with what they are talking about. It's like, okay, about gong or something, but we are here now with the gong, with the same spirit, with the idea. And then for me, it's like from the April session, is I want to have like, how about the texture, the timing, and I use a text, I use a playback. And then I just, my background is more interdisciplinary art, and then voice, and then theatrical movement, something like that. But I think, okay, for orchestra, it's too complicated to use the theatrical things. So I think I don't want to use it. But, Topi, Topi is like knock me, is, Gema, why? You are not using your theatrical element in this orchestra. Okay, is it possible or not? And then how about the orchestra? Is this the first time that orchestra and there's a theatrical elements in the piece? And then, yeah, I know Jason is also like, about this, the movement, and then, but yes, I did it, and then I try, even if so many things, to be flexible, to be also adapting each other. I bring my barabab player from Indonesia, and also a vocal, and the narrator, and then how it will be work with the orchestra. Yeah, let's see. I think that's the process, how also thanks to Topi to encourage me and us maybe, and how to like, okay, this is your strength. You can go out is more and more, and then yeah, he just said that, how about the movement, and then how about you use with the gong, and then I just, okay, maybe the gong, it can be like this, and then I just talk, okay, the idea is appear, and then, okay, got it, and he said that, yes, okay. Finally, I got it, and I bring it to the stage on Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you, Gema. Someone has told or defined art so that an artist creates his or her own truth or world, but it becomes live only when someone else understands that truth or that world. And big part of our project is that communication between those two things, between conductor, composer. But now I would like to open the discussion to you in the same spirit. It's an open mic, not stand-up comedy, open mic. Oh, if you're funny, that's fine. But would you like to ask something from anyone of us, any composers?
I just want to start by telling all of you how proud we are of what you've done. It's an extraordinary accomplishment, not just to be here all together and to have this ready this Saturday, but to have done it together as a team effort. It's a symbol for what the world should be in a time of war and in a time of suffering. So I'm so proud of you, as is our whole family. I want to ask about the flowing part in flowing resonances. If gongs are the resonance, the river is the flowing. And one of our dreams is that if you enjoyed this process, and if the audience enjoys it, we'd love to perhaps, with Peter and your name, sir? Topi and Jason and Adeline's partnership, expand this to the Asian Century Symphony and add India, China, Korea, Japan. And for them, rivers are very important. The Ganges, the Indus, the Yangtze, and many others. So tell us about the river, and how does the river come into the symphony?
Okay. No, it's okay. So, yes, the symbolism or the metaphor about the river flowing. Again, water is very important in the Gong culture and where I came from, because I shared to them earlier that we cannot just sound the gong, it has to be beside the river. And this kind of rules or tradition has a lot of importance for me as I think through the work about respect, about identity, about keeping this in mind, this kind of rules. And I thought that in an orchestra setting, there are certain rules as well, and there are compromises that we have to make, and not also to be, how would I phrase this, in a way that it has to have both respect between the players and also as the composers. But in my work, there is a symbolism about the form and how the transition between the materials has occurred, and this is how I express also how the flowing of the materials, of the different sections of the orchestra, and being mindful and respectful about this certain rules that we have to mindful about. I think that's for me.
Some other comments, questions? Thank you, Danny.
Hi guys, this is so wonderful. We're all excited for tomorrow. I was curious how you guys thought about the transitions between the movements and the handoffs between the movements and the order of the movements. Of like, what culture did you start with and end with, and how did you think through that? Is it very modular movements that could be, you know, in any order at any time, or was there some thought into the transitions and the handoffs musically?
Good question. So that was one of the first things we had to address. Like, how are we going to do? Are we going to do a taka? Are we going to have a pause for people, latecomers, to come in? You know, stuff like that. All these things we had to take into account. We wanted to think about philosophical connections between, say, taboo and ritual. You know, and of course, then we have to deal with the logistics, because this week we had to, even at a very late stage, we had to make these adjustments. And so I think some of these flow states that we're trying to conjure up originally had to be changed. And in a way, they'll be sort of reapproached in a new fashion on the concert day itself. But in a big picture, we're also still in a sense of flow. And it's an ongoing process. Yeah.
Just adding on to that, it was how we had our heated discussion, right? We were the angry part of this discussion that we've had was always this thing about connecting our movements together. And then in the end, we thought, okay, it was actually Big who presented this idea. I think we needed to have someone else coming in to look into the bigger picture to help us connect everything. And that's how Topi came on board. Yeah. Would you want to share about this?
So, yeah, that's how it happened. So, but after that, of course, what shall we do with 7 pieces? We had a very intense conversation with some of you, and with Jonathan especially, like, are we going to compose something in between? But we kind of concluded that actually we would like to give your individual voices the space it needs, and rather think the whole evening as a dramaturgical whole, and just put the order of the pieces so that for you, for the audience members, you can keep up the attention. You see the flow of the dramaturgical river meandering, but being all the time very, very attentive. I think we have now had a lot of textual and verbal communication about this piece, and before Peter comes to say the last words, we invite you to an open rehearsal, which starts at 4:30, so a few minutes, and you are welcome to come and follow the rehearsal for 1 hour. On my behalf, I would like to thank all the participants, especially thank Nick Nash and Peter Turnquist for this wonderful idea. Which continues the marvelous river spirit of YST from a longer time ago. Please, Peter.
Thank you, Topi, and thank you all the composers for sharing these very important thoughts. I just wanted to comment actually before we close, because we have to get the orchestra here. Just to answer your question, Nick, the flowing, it's the secret sauce that actually binds Southeast Asia together as a region, and it's represented by us selecting these composers. They came up with the idea of the river being a binding idea, and the gong, being musicians, they latched on to the gong because it's a sonic representation. But we could see that the real connection was happening, not in the resonances, but in the flowing. So that's your answer in terms of, and that's what you probably will hear, because, so I'm a composer myself, Adeline is a composer, so we actually have 9 voices here trying to mix. It's a nightmare, trying to have so many creative people working together. We don't normally do that in music, and that's a testimony to what's possible when the resources align and when the intentions align, when there is a vision. We're looking forward to this. I think Brett introduced this as the biggest, what did you say? The biggest collaboration. I would say the biggest challenge we have taken on. And it is about taking risks. We have no idea of whether this would actually turn out to be a successful symphony. But guess what? Beethoven didn't know that either. Or Brahms, or Sibelius. That is the point of making music. You take risks, we'll see what happened. But it helps a lot to have brilliant people, and I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Jason for actually being the midwife here. And we've had some conversations along the way. I know you're completely on board of this project, but you're still responsible in the end for keeping us on time. I decided to bring in Topi at a point here, and Topi, we tried to discuss what title you would have. I think we end up with some sort of curator, but I think you've ended up being much more than that, a mentor for many of these composers, and thank you very much for that contribution. So whenever we Scandinavians try to collaborate with, we end up with, we need at least 2. So we make up in height what we lack in languages. But also, Adeline, you've been a phenomenal artistic director for this whole project, and I think you have learned a lot also.
Indeed, it was my great honor to work with the 7 composers and with you, Topi, and of course with Peter and Brad and Jason on this project. It's been a great, wonderful experience for me as well.
And we're not there yet, so we will get there.
We'll be looking forward to Saturday.
But sort of as your boss, I'm going to say you've got one thing wrong, and that's the timeline. Because this didn't start in July. This started on 14th of February last year, because that's the day I started on this job. And 1 hour into being in the office, I got a phone call from this gentleman with a very crazy idea. And that led us to a lot of conversations about Southeast Asia, me learning a lot about Southeast Asia, about investment and growing something in this region. And in fact, the idea of the golden age of Southeast Asia came through you, Nick. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and Phalgun for the generous contributions and for the support all the way through. And I know you have like 200 guests coming on Saturday. So we hope you have a good time. We hope the risks you have taken pay off, because that's what you do as an investor. So I'm quite confident that you know how to balance, the cost benefit of all of it. And but I would say, don't think too much. Just enjoy Saturday.
I'm so grateful to Peter's words, and it's a great honor for us to be part of it. I do want to share just one last thought, and it's inspired by Shaf's comment about accommodating. The hardest thing about getting along with other people, or working with other people, or getting along with other countries in this challenging world isn't changing their minds, it's changing your own. The fact that each of you were willing to change your own minds about what went into your movements and made it all of your collective movements very special. In the Malay language, there's a word called kita and a word called kami. Kami, or kita, one of them means you excluding me, and the other means you including all of us together. You guys figured out how to do that. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Nick. And you're all invited to stay in the hall. The rehearsal starts in 10 minutes. Just stay. It lasts an hour. I have no idea what happens. Will you run through the whole piece or what?
We'll be rehearsing. It's an open rehearsal.
Okay.
But we will do one later on. But it's
yeah. So feel free to stay. Feel free to leave after some. Just be silent, and also acknowledge the one experiment we are doing. Of spraying sandalwood in the entrance, just to get like a Southeast Asian feeling. So just tell the production team if it was enough or too much. It's a bit of a survey. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Do stay, the musicians are about to come on. Thank you very much.